Hello everyone, it's Shannon here. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I am participating in the fun over at Honeybee Stamps, celebrating their 10,000 YouTube subscribers with this video in which we're going to create these inlay cards. I'm going to start today's cards with the Quilt Triangle Thin Frames die. This is a great die that cuts out lots of little thin triangle frames. I'm going to first just die cut it out of 110-pound white cardstock. As you can see, all the frames cut out beautifully. Now I'm going to take this tool. This is actually an attachment to a Spellbinder's die pick, and this is just got almost like a bristly brush at the end, and I'm just brushing these die cuts to remove as much of the little paper hairs as I possibly can. And paper hairs are just those little thin pieces of paper, teeny tiny thin pieces of paper that are sometimes attached to your die cuts after you die cut them. We want to remove those because they're going to kind of inhibit our coloring. They're going to be very visible if you leave any of those little white hairs. So I'm going to take several Copic colors here and just color each one of the frames. There's actually 11 if you count the teeny tiniest one at the middle. I have 10 colors picked out. I started with a really burgundy red here, and I'm just going to color the whole front as well as all the sides, which I'm working on right now. I'm coloring all the sides, the inside sides and the outside sides. That little edge, even though it's very thin, it's just the thickness of the paper, it can really read white when you start to inlay all these colors. So that, just by coloring that edge, it really helps it out. We have some more clean and polished look. Now I'm going to move on to the next largest die and just color the next color I have picked out of my Copic selection. And I'm basically just going to repeat this process for every one of my triangle frames. I'm going to start by coloring the top of the frame with my Copic color, then color the interior and the exterior sides with that same color, and then I'll move on to the next frame. And I'm going to continue to work my way through all the frames till I get to the very teeny tiniest one, which is this one here, and I'm going to start over and start with my first red, which is that burgundy color. Now I have a piece of press and seal, and I've used a couple pieces of tape to hold it down onto my work surface, and I have the sticky side up, and I'm just going to use that to help me assemble my triangles here, inlay one inside of the other. So starting with my largest and then just working my way through. So for this triangle, I obviously picked out red, orange, and purple colors, but you can really use whatever colors you choose. For my second triangle, I used teal, yellow, and orange. So there's just really whatever combo you want to use, you can. You could even do rainbow if you like. And because this design is very kind of clean and simple and graphic, and you can do whatever color combo you want, this is a great design for masculine cards. So now that I have all the frames inlay, I'm going to place some pieces of painter's tape on top to hold those frames in place, and then I'll carefully peel back the press and seal. You could definitely use press and seal or instead of painter's tape if you prefer. I just think the painter's tape holds it a little bit stronger than the press and seal does. Now I'm going to move on to debossing with the Quilt Triangle Thin Frames die. So I have a piece of lightweight cardstock that's 4x4. This is actually 80 pound. 65 would also work as well. You want a lighter weight because that helps to prevent the die from actually cutting through the cardstock or splitting the paper. So I'm going to deboss this, which means I need a little different sandwich. I'm going to start with the rubber mat, then I'll place down my paper and die. I do have the die taped down to my paper just so it doesn't shift, and then I'll top it off with the embossing plate. Then I'll run it through my die cutting machine, and as you can see here, it won't die cut the paper, but it will leave an impression, just kind of like an embossing folder would work. So it's a great way to kind of stretch those dies to use them for debossing as well. So I want to adhere this, our inlay triangle on the other side, but this 4x4 piece of cardstock is a little too big, so I just traced the edge that I wanted to cut off and then trimmed it down. And now I'm going to move on to stamping my sentiment because I'm almost ready to put this card together. I have a sentiment from the birthday stamp set. I'm just going to stamp it here on this gray cardstock. I'm going to do some heat embossing, so I applied some anti-static powder. Then I'm going to ink it up with VersaMark ink and then just stamp it on to the cardstock. Then I'll dip it into some white embossing powder and of course heat set it with my heat tool. And I do want this to be a sentiment strip, so I will off camera trim it down so it's just a thin strip. Now I'm going to adhere my triangles on to the square panel. I put down some tape with a tape runner, and then I just positioned my triangles, and now I'll carefully remove the painter's tape that's just holding all of them together. And I did pull up the very teeny tiny center one, so I just kind of put the tape back down, pressed on the back to make sure it got really stuck down to the panel instead of stuck still to the tape. Now I'm going to finish just by adding some liquid glue to the back side of my sentiment. Just place it just adjacent to the inlay triangles. And all I have left to do is just adhere it to my square card base. The square card base is, when folded, it's 4 1/4 by 4 1/4, so it will fit into a A2 envelope, so it won't actually cost you any extra or any more to just mail it like your typical A2 cards. And here's the finished card. And I'll hold the card up to the camera so you can get a good look at it. I love the very subtle debossed background, and then of course paired with the very colorful inlay stripes. I think this is a really fun card design, clean and simple, and great for cards for anybody, including masculine cards. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you'd like any more information on the products I use, please check out the links below in the description. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up or consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.